Welcome to Cine Bijou, where we delve into the diverse creative world of independent film with your host, Ramon Wrights.
Hello everyone, so glad you tuned in. Every fortnight through feature explorations and insightfully fun interviews, we'll make Cine Bijou your destination for discovering hidden gems and supporting the voices of indie films that deserve to be heard. So grab your popcorn and settle into your seats as we shine a spotlight on emerging filmmakers, thought-provoking narratives, and groundbreaking techniques that redefine the art of storytelling. Over the last few years, Creator VC have been leading the way in community-funded long-form documentaries that are essentially epic tributes to film genres and titles of the golden ages of cinema. In Search of the Last Action Heroes, the In Search of Darkness trilogy, In Search of Tomorrow, and more recently Aliens Expanded are nostalgic deep dive love letters celebrating those eras and the films that came from them. They're essentially written, produced by, starring, and made for the fans. One such fan is writer and broadcaster Ian Nathan, who, hot off the success of his directorial debut with Creator VC, the epic Aliens Expanded, brings us even more of the stories and insights we love about our favourite films of yesteryear. Now, any cinephile worth their salt should be familiar with Ian's work, from his formative tenure at Empire magazine to his numerous published works featuring some of cinema's greatest films and directors. Ian has now turned his sharp lens to one of the most iconic and chilling films of all time, John Carpenter's The Thing. With The Thing Expanded, Ian delves into the making of this 1982 cult classic, unravelling the layers of its production, the groundbreaking special effects that still resonate today, and the lasting impact it's had on the genre. But this isn't just a look back. Ian's documentary promises fresh perspectives, fan tributes, and a delve into the mysteries which have sparked discussions and debates about many aspects of the film, including its cliffhanger ending. Debates that continue to this day. So, whether you're a long-time fan of The Thing, or you're just curious about what makes this film so enduringly terrifying, you won't want to miss this conversation. Let's dive in then as we chat with Ian about The Thing Expanded, what we can expect in the finished film, and the enduring legacy of John Carpenter's The Thing. Now, as we've spoken before the recording started, you have done some work for Creator VC before. You provided insight and commentary in Search of the Last Action Heroes, which was written and directed by Oliver Harper. You also featured on In Search of Tomorrow, and you were also the writer, presenter, the main figure of the recently released Aliens Expanded.
Yeah, director.
So you've got a good relationship.
So that's my biggie.
Yeah, that's your biggie.
Yeah.
But you've got a really good working relationship with Robin and David Weiner and the team. What is it about Creative VC that has you going back to them to do more work, to work with them more? What is it about their output, their ethos?
Yeah, fundamentally, it's great opportunities to work on things I love, films I love, to express my love of those films. When Robin first asked me to direct a film for him, which came as a bit of a shock. I was a writer, I've been on magazines, I've written books, but he said, how do you feel about directing a documentary? It almost sounded vaguely absurd. I'm like, have you got the right guy? But he's, no, I've absolutely got the right guy. You were the guy to do Aliens Expanded, is what would come of that conversation. And what I love is that they want to create content, if you want to put it that way, make films that really speak to the heart of what I love about film. That the fundamental, although they're called In Search of Darkness or In Search of Tomorrow, In Search for Last Action Heroes, and they are themed around genres and eras, and Aliens is obviously all about aliens, Aliens Expanded, they all do one thing that's the same, is they explore our love of those films. They explore the nature of fandom, the nature of passion, which I don't think is a subject that's actually explored enough. There's a lot of stuff out there about the fabric of films and the making of films and what the films might mean and all those elements, which are all wonderful. But very few documentaries really speak to this relationship we have with films. And it's an amazing thing, I think. Yeah. And I wanted to get into that. And for me, what Creative VC have offered me is a chance to expand, no pun intended, but expand my creative palette. It's, it seems such a special thing to be able to kind of delve into, the things you love the most, and to talk about the things you love the most, and to explore them on a level where, one of the key things about Aliens Expanded especially was going into it, I could make a film that understood that everybody's going to watch that film. And not only had they already seen it, but they knew it really well. So I could enter into a conversation with them that was on the level of, exactly who Gale Anne Hurd is, exactly how this film is made. And I can go on from there. And I can talk about the things that are important to you. Also, and this goes back to my Empire days, there's something I think in great film writing and film discussion and film documentary making, film commentary, if you want, that should be about shared experience. And, when you go to the pub with friends and you just want to talk about your favorite movies, you can talk about movies you talked about the night before quite happily, go, oh, that bit, and just enjoy that process of reminding yourself why you love something. And I think that's at the heart of what Creative VC doing. We're reminding you why you love something. And who doesn't want to be reminded about why they love something? It's a lovely process. Yes, there is intelligence, and there's analysis, and there is very detailed discussion, but it's not about critiquing. It's not about pulling apart. It's about assessing why something works. You're starting with classics. You're starting with masterpieces. Aliens, The Thing. What David does with In Search of Darkness is a bit more sort of textured around a relationship with a genre, but it's about love. And I love that. And I love the chance, when Robin says, do you want to make a documentary? Essentially, you can make it 4 hours long. And that's kind of almost part of the point, that sounds indulgent. And I go, yes, completely. It's completely indulgent. That's the whole point. We're indulging ourselves. That's what Creative VC do.
And these explorations, they really, for people who grew up watching those films at pinnacle moments in their lives, like for me, Aliens and The Thing came into my early to mid-teens, very impressionable, still formulating, making my way in through the world, so to speak. Looking at these films, I suppose, and diving into them so deeply to learn what made them work and why they were so innovative, I suppose, really tugs at the heartstrings as well, doesn't it? And reawakens all those memories about those films that maybe perhaps you'd set them aside as your life sort of moved on.
Yeah, film is a very emotional thing. I mean, it's emotional in the sense, I think, the most fundamental impulse of any filmmaker is to move our emotions in some way, scare us, to make us feel for the characters. It's the essence of film is not a mechanical one, it's an emotional one. And somehow you use images and dialogue to sort of do that. And that's very important in our relationship. I mean, your taste in film is such a personal thing, isn't it? When you love a film and you meet someone who says, I don't really like that, you don't like them. You take against them because they're basically telling you something that's so important to you isn't special. And I really recognize that it's really key in terms of people's lives and how they've grown up, as you were saying, how, where these films sort of were encountered and how they go on being a friend for life. That is really important to fans and should not be diminished. There's a great sort of sense in general culture of people who go, well, music is like the soundtrack of your life and music is so important to people and recognize it. But I think film does the same thing. Film isn't just, something you watch once and goes away. There are certain films like that. But when a film lasts with you, it's an enormously important part of your life. And that's true for me of Aliens and The Thing, that I recognize that I was 15 when I saw both those films. Like you're saying, I hadn't fully formed who I was yet. I didn't know what my future career would be. But yeah, I saw The Thing and Alien on VHS. I played hooky from school, watched them both the same afternoon, and a friend's dad had a VHS player, this miraculous thing in the corner of the room that like the Ark of the Covenant. And you could put these tapes into it and play films. Incredible. But that afternoon, watching those two films was life-changing for me, literally, because it planted the seeds of who I would become. I didn't know it yet. And I wanted to invest, not only the interviews I did on In Search for Tomorrow and In Search for the Last Action Heroes, but also especially Aliens Expanded, with every bit of my own passion and feeling and life. It's not explicit. I don't tell you my life story. That gets in the way. But implicit in the film is my own biography, is my own story and my own relationship with those films. That every beat of it, I'm going, oh, God, yeah, the bit where Bert comes in and he does this, and then talking to Paul Reiser about it. And, that's so exciting and so special for me. And I hope I'm communicating that emotion to you as a viewer as well.
It certainly comes across that way. And I think, again, goes back to what we both touched on, which is because these films were so important to us at pinnacle moments in our lives, to then revisit them, but in the unique way you do, by speaking to the people in that film.
Yeah,
I think is just heightens the emotion. And then I think any viewer can vicariously live through you, the interviewer, to think, oh, they're telling me about that experience, so
totally,
I can imagine, yeah.
Exactly the way we set up Aliens Expanded was that, the backers come on board before you've shot a frame. And you have your plans, and you share your plans, you share your synopsis, and you share who you're going to try and get, and all the things that go into a documentary. And they, obviously there's thousands of backers. It's impossible to take on every single thought. You never get anywhere.
Of course, yeah.
But you build, you read patterns, and you get a sense of what people are saying to you. And I talked to a lot of the kind of people who ran big websites, and I got their insight. You can't neglect the fact that all these people have an important thing to say and know a lot about these films. And I wanted to draw upon that and channel it into the film. It was clear this was a film about, it was a film about being a companion to the film itself. It was a relationship. The one thing I would love to know, and I hope that people watch Aliens Expanded, all 4 hours, 17 minutes of it, excluding the credits. And one thing they want to do at the end of it is watch Aliens again. Is they want to go, all right, I'm going to watch Aliens again, because you've enhanced that relationship they have with it. And that was about talking to everyone, talking to people like Cynthia Scott and Daniel Cash, who play Dietrich and Spunkmeyer, who are a very small part of the film, but they're great personalities. And the fact that you've got them and appreciate them is something every fan who's invested in the documentary knows. My biggest fear in making the film was it wouldn't live up to what people wanted of it. All these backers. That was my biggest fear. I didn't want them to come away going, well, that wasn't worth it, was it? So every ounce of terror went into it. I've got to make sure this does something for the viewer. It may not be exactly the film you would have made. You might have gone in different directions with things, but I hope that everyone will see that it's for them, and it appreciates who they are in terms of their knowledge and their love of the film. And it's a shared experience.
Presumably you're happy with what you put out. You're happy with feedback you've got.
It is lovely to hear the praise. You work in a relative vacuum. Once you're in production, certainly once you're in the edit, and you're watching this film again and again and again, you're watching these clips again and again and again, you become a bit snowblind. You get a bit like, and you start to question yourself, and you start to go, is this good? People care. Well, they care. And I got a really good editor, Sam, and he was very good at kind of debating the points and going through things, and he contributed huge amounts. And Robin and David would see cuts, and they were great. But in the end, you're still in this little encampment where you don't know what the outside world will think. And we did a couple of test screenings with certain people. We did a very early cut before Christmas last year that was very rough, and just to get a sense of what, were we even heading in the right direction? And we got a very encouraging response to that. Then I did a screening in a cinema just after, because obviously Cameron and Sigourney came in quite late in the process. But we've done Cameron, and it was only a couple of weeks after that we did a cinema screening. And that was still, relatively speaking, it's a term my editor used, a bit janky in places, because you haven't managed to finesse the interviews. but I got a sense of that. And it's really interesting listening to the film in a room with other people watching it, and laughs that you hadn't expected, and silences that you think it is good, but you realize people are really into it. And when you're asking people to watch a 4 hour plus film in a cinema, you're asking a lot of people, because it's not designed really for cinema release. It's designed for home consumption. But no one came up to me after and said, so bored, I just couldn't wait for it to finish. They all were very complimentary. Yeah, there've been some reviews, as always, where people are a bit like, oh, it's better if it was a bit shorter. Oh, it feels a bit lengthy to me. But I kind of think, well, I knew going in it was going to be long, and being long is the point. It's a gift to fans. It's not for someone who's casual about aliens. It's 4 hours of aliens talk. So if you're casual about the film, of course it's not for you. But if you are interested in science fiction, and then you're surely going to be interested in Alien and Aliens, and probably some of the other Alien films as well, then you're going to have a passion, and then it is for you. So yeah, it's been very gratifying to get the response that I have. You still, all through my career is kind of sharp principle. You want to keep swimming. The next thing will be the best thing. You're going to keep moving. That's kind of how my brain works. So I'm really happy with it. But when I do the thing, there are things I think I can do better with the thing. And that's just about how I work creatively.
Well, let's move on to the thing, because you were saying about how, you want to keep moving and take on the next project. So let's talk about the thing Expanded. I presume I haven't had a chance to watch Aliens Expanded yet. I'm hoping to catch it on the next run of orders. So is it going to take the same format then of exclusive interviews with as many cast and crew as you can find?
The expanded format was developed with Aliens. It was one of the kind of the elements of the journey we went on was, could we make this format work? So the essential format is taking the finished film and dividing it into chapters, and they run chronologically. So basically you cover the whole film, and you go within each chapter and then draw out from that chapter not only the storyline, but you start to move around and talk about themes and making of stories and fan ideas. You sort of swim about within the film, and then come back to the next chapter and move on. That's what guides you through the documentary. That format will work again with the thing. We will take the film and break it down into chapters, and then interview as many people as we can to build up the same texture that we did with Aliens. I mean, there are big differences between the thing and Aliens. Now, I'm kind of intrigued by that. Both are classic sci-fi horrors, of course, but the thing is a very different film in the sense it's made by John Carpenter, who's a very different director to James Cameron. It has a different sensibility. It's got what I'd like to call a 70s sensibility. I know it came out in 1982, but it's paranoia, it's cynicism, I think, apply much more to the 1970s and of Carpenter's history than they do to the 1980s. Whereas maybe Aliens is very much a James Cameron 1980s film. It's buoyant and character-driven, funny. So I think the thing will make a very different version of the expanded format. There's far fewer cast members, the ones that are still alive. So there isn't all the Marines in that sense. So it won't be as cumulative. Carpenter is a different kind of interview to Cameron. Carpenter is like his film. He's a bit more withdrawn. He's more cynical. He's clever, obviously. And he is determined not to answer the mysteries because he doesn't want to stop the mystery existing. His point is you can go and say, well, who is the thing at the end? What's going on? Who is the shadow on the wall? All the kind of the questions that the film throws up. He will go, I'm just not going to answer that, because as soon as I do, then it's over. The answer is then, and it's a great quote from Stephen King about, what, as a horror specialist, let's call him, you hope to achieve. Your ultimate goal is terror. And he says, terror is the knock at the door. And as soon as the door is opened, it becomes horror. Because there's nothing you as a writer or a filmmaker can do, or a documentary maker can tell, that will answer the imagination of the reader or the viewer. What goes on in the imagination will always outweigh anything, and that's terror, the possibility of what's on the other side. So the possibility of what the answers are, you know, for Carpenter has to be maintained. You've got to keep it as terror. You know, we must imagine what's happening rather than him going, let me tell you, here's what's going on, you know, in the thing. Because it withholds so much. You watch that film and the story is often not elsewhere from where the main events are happening. It's really intriguing. You know, the thing stuff's going on in another room almost. It's not that I won't attempt to answer those questions, and I'll bring in specialists, I'll bring in fans, and I'll bring in hopefully some celebrity commentators to speculate wildly on what may be going on. But I think it'll be to the credit of The Thing Expanded that when it finishes and the credits roll, I won't have underlined anything. I won't have given you a hard and fast answer on any of it. As Carpenter says, you've got to keep the mystery open. And you know what? During the making of Aliens Expanded, I went to a talk by Thelma Schoonmaker, who's obviously Martin Scorsese's editor, and she's worked on so many of his documentaries. And she was saying the point of a documentary isn't to answer questions, it's to ask more questions. Yeah. So you take a load of questions, and there'll be many in The Thing Expanded, and hopefully your viewer will go away going, but what about? But what about? And you just want to get their brain moving. And I think that's great. You know, that's kind of what you want with Expanded. It's a dialogue with the fan. It's not a kind of answer to an exam question. What does the thing mean? It's a dialogue about what could the thing mean? And then it's open-ended. And that, you know, with Carpenter's resistance built into the documentary is, I think, where we'll get. But I'm going to interview, you know, as many people as I can. You know, I want to build up a great picture. And, you know, what I realized with Aliens as well is documentaries are quite performative. It's about how people are, personalities, as much as about what they say. And Carpenter's great. And I want to bring in a whole, you know, spectrum of personalities will make you laugh or fascinate you and frustrate you and do all the things that different voices can do. Because it's, you know, with these expanded films, they're a symphony. You know, they are about multiplicity of voices. And that's what we're going to do with The Thing.
It's interesting what you said about Carpenter, talking about how he won't answer the questions that people are asking because he wants to keep the mystery alive. And for over 40 years, people are still talking about that ending, as well as the alternate endings. How would that have changed the story? But it's like just the other day, actually, I found a video on YouTube. What Culture Horror did a 12-minute feature on when did everybody in the film become the Thing. Now, they didn't have any definitive answers, but they were speculating for the whole. Well, at this point, you know, this is what happened to Knowles. Well, he got killed off camera by the Thing, and well, when did Blair? At what point did he become the Thing? And it was very well argued, very well reasoned and thought out, and they used the clips to the advantage. But you still come away with no definitive answers. But all you have is a persuasive argument that, as you say, that's what could have happened.
Yeah. And
it's also interesting. Yeah.
It's what's so joyous about it. I mean, I've been doing this similar research to you. There's this extraordinary sort of timeline graphics that people have done where they follow each character and say, right, at this point, they've become the Thing, and it's the blood sample here, and it's that, and this is the person who wrecked the blood samples. It has to be them, and Blair was converted here. But as soon as you do that, you start to open up more questions because you start going, well, does the Thing know what it's doing? How sentient is the Thing? You know, what is its plan? Is it just trying to survive? You know, what is the other dimension? And that's what's wonderful about the film. You know, it becomes more puzzling the more you think about it. I don't know. And Carpenter was a little bit, you know, he said, you know, there are things I don't know. You know, there are things even I don't know in terms of it. He said, I'm happy with that. You know, he's happy with kind of what is actually going on or what's not going on. And that presents a challenge to the documentary maker, of course, because, you know, with Aliens, Cameron shows you everything. You know why people are, why they are at any point in time, and what is the peril in question. You know, the risk element and all those things, because that's how Cameron makes his films, and that's what's so exciting about Aliens. But with The Thing, it's up to the viewer, you know, and that kind of creeping sense of dread, you know, the incredible centerpiece of the blood test. And you don't know which one of those guys on the sofa, you know, is the Thing. And that's the whole point. it's not a guessing game of a film. It's not a whodunit in the sense of like Carpenter gives you enough information and you can sort of figure it out. Yet there are all these people who applied such, I would call, mathematical nuance to the film to try and estimate, where the thing is at any one point. And that's fabulous. I love that. I mean, I will try. I think we've talked, me and the graphics team have talked about how can we incorporate a kind of timeline through the film into the documentary where we try and estimate where the thing is at any one point. So as we go through the film, we'll go back to our graphic and go, at this point, Blair is here and he's doing this. You start to calculate it. But as you say, I don't think we'll know if that's the right answer. We'll just estimate it.
And it's an answer or a secret or something that Carpenter, I would imagine, will take to his grave, which won't be hopefully for many, many years.
Yeah.
But, and it's interesting because 1982 was a golden era of 80s cinema, really. There was pivotal films that came out. And it's interesting that with The Thing, you've got a lot of unanswered questions. And there was another genre film out that year, which presented many questions that people are still debating. And its director has not really confirmed either way, and that was Blade Runner. People are still asking, even after Blade Runner 2049, was Deckard a replicant?
Yeah.
And that's a conversation that people are... So, and it does answer the question as well, Ian, as to why you picked The Thing. It is it's so visceral, and it sparks conversation, and it's fun conversation. I'm sure some people get quite heated about their ideas.
And passion's great, and passion is what you feed off. And it's really interesting. What you talk about Blade Runner, and the thing is that one of the powerful things of both Blade Runner and The Thing, from the great summer of 1982, the E.T. summer, is that the nature of those films is they haunt you. You come away from them and they won't leave you alone. They'll nag at you and you'll think about them, and your idle moments, you'll start going, what was MacReady doing then? What does it MacReady know and doesn't know? You start to kind of, and that's the power of cinema and the power of those kind of ambiguous films. What made The Thing the ideal second expanded film? And we talked a lot, during the production of Aliens, we kept going, well, what should we do next? And, and there's a lot of factors you build in. You look at who you potentially can get, and you look at the potential audience, and fandom becomes a very important factor. You test the waters on things and see. And we talked about Blade Runner, and it's certainly something that we've got in the cupboard. I get the sense that Ridley is sick of talking about Blade Runner now, and and I adore Ridley, but he's Carpenter is a lightweight in terms of cynicism when it comes to Ridley, but that's who he is. And we arrived at The Thing very quickly. One, I wanted to make a different film to Aliens. I wanted to have all that passion that fans have, but I wanted it to be a different film, so it would be a different documentary. And the nature, as I've sort of spoken about, the nature of The Thing worked perfectly. It had so much more mystery in it. It had this different, much more cynical feel. Its view of humanity was very bleak. Aliens is very positive about humanity. Ripley is someone we aspire to be. She's a leader. Whereas MacReady is, he's a tough son of a bitch, basically. And you like him, because he's an anti-hero, and, he's an alcoholic. He's completely different. And you have these kind of guys who are kind of embittered and don't like each other. And so it's a very different film. And in doing these documentaries, the film tells you a lot. It tells you what kind of documentary it wants to be. It informs you. And I've worked that out with Aliens. It's, that film, Aliens told me what Aliens Expanded should be. And The Thing will tell me what The Thing Expanded should be. And I love that it wasn't a hit. It became a cult slowly. It's kind of weird to think of it as a flop now, because I just think of it as a classic. But it wasn't. It was, and I think Carpenter still finds that hard to deal with. He knew he'd made his best film, and to have it fail, it was so poorly released. It was a summer when everybody wanted to see E.T. as many times as they could. It was
Mhm.
an optimistic summer. Although I
Mhm.
would argue with you that actually E.T. is not a feel-good film at all. It's a very traumatic film, you know, but that's a whole
No, I can't. I can't watch ET. I actually can't. It's because that that pinnacle moment when ET effectively dies
yeah.
is horrible to watch,
Oh,
even now as a
that film
grown
was
up. So
traumatic. It's all about, you know, they're going to have to part. You know that. And, you
yeah,
know, it's devastating. So anyone who says that E.T. is feel good, well, they're watching the wrong film. But that's a whole different argument. And maybe E.T. expanded might be something we come back to down the line. But the thing just seemed to click very quickly into place. And obviously, with Robin is very good at then going out into the fandom and just basically asking them almost and said, well, what do you think? We want to do the thing expanded. Look, we've done Aliens Expanded. This is what we did. We've done In Search of Darkness. You know our credentials. How do you feel? And he starts to build a, you know, a sense of, you know, what we can do. You can't make these documentaries without the fans backing you. You can't do it. That's the model. So if, you know, if the fans show no interest, then it's over and done with. You know, we're not going to the
Mhm.
studios and asking them for a budget. This isn't how we work. So it was very clear that, you know, we need the fans to even exist. So the film choice we make is, you know, as much of it's about our passions, but it's about knowing that the fandom is out there ready to receive it. And, you know, we're in our pre-sale period now, and it's clear that there's a huge passion for the thing and that they want it, and that Aliens Expanded has spoken to people. And I hope that over time we will curate a kind of criterion editions of passionate documentaries about great sci-fi properties. I will have a shelf, you know, we have 10 of them, you know, starting with Aliens, and maybe we'll do Blade Runner, and you know, I'd do actually Back to the Future at some point. But you know, all these different
Mhm.
sci-fi and horror films that we will have this extraordinary expanded collection. That's my dream. That's Robin's dream, that we will contribute, hopefully, to film preservation and culture and the absorption of films, because it's not represented enough in certainly how the studios now go about their business. They have these
Mhm.
wonderful libraries, and they don't really know, you know, the adoration out there for these titles. And it's what we do, and it's what we do well, because that's who we are. You know, we are fans fundamentally, and you know, we've been given this wonderful opportunity to go out and curate these love letters, as you said, these love letters
Mhm.
to some of the greatest sci-fi horror films ever made. And what's fascinating to me long term is that what are the next ones? You know, what
Mhm.
you know, beyond the thing, what other films, you know, what bandwidth is there on certain films? And I'm intrigued to know where we'll go next.
And I suppose also it's really important to curate and collect and archive as much of these insights as possible in documentary form or in book form, like your books are quite, you know, there's a lot of pictures and it's
Yeah.
very colorful, but there's a lot of detail there too. But I suppose it's important because a lot of these films that we are all passionate about that are groundbreaking, and people today still look to Carpenter, to Scott, to Ridley Scott, to whomever, and say it's their work that influenced me. Uh, because they're not going to be around forever, are they? This is the
Yeah,
real
it's
sad
true.
fact.
Oh, totally. You know, it's something you are aware of. And of course, you don't want to put a kind of morbid pall across what you
Mm,
do. But I don't think someone will get the whole cast of Aliens together again in that sense. I can't imagine this is the
mhm,
last time, you know, they will all do contemporaneous interviews, you know, and it will all be put together. I can't
mhm,
see it happening. You know, I may be wrong, yeah, but they're all getting older, and you know,
mhm,
so 5, 10 years they probably won't be around, some of those cast members. It's true of the thing as well. And yeah,
mhm,
these are historical documents that we're trying to achieve. We're trying to not put a full stop in it at all, but hopefully create a historical document that will be a huge and lasting contribution to the legacy of these films.
mhm,
You know, what you're trying to do is maintain them, you know, and maintain that love, and you know, keep it burning.
mhm,
You're not. I'm not trying to kind of write kind of valedictories for them. But
mhm,
there's an element of that. I mean, also that because we're picking films or the films that seem to work are from the 1980s, and that era was very special for science fiction and horror. Yeah, it might be that we come to some 90s films, down the line, that we might do The Matrix, say, I don't know. And that'll be different. It won't be quite so, long in the tooth in terms of the age of the film. But even that film's getting on a bit now, isn't it? So,
yes.
So it's, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for the fact that I think we are honoring the legacy of these films as well. They're not museum pieces that I'm making, but they recognize history and that these films have become history. And why is that? What is the historical process, and why is it love, is created around them?
I think it's because, for me, so many modern films of this ilk seem to be quite ephemeral, even for someone with a high attention span as myself. We grew up in the era pre-social media, pre-TikTok, so we absorbed all and we immersed ourselves in all this content. And I think it's because films like these leave a lasting impression, and they have that staying power in the way they were made, in the techniques of writing as well as effects and cinematography. Which leads me on to what I want to ask about this documentary then as well, is in terms of getting people lined up to feature. I know you've not long started the research and you started making contact. What are the big gets for you in terms of interviews with surviving members of the cast and crew? Because I know so many of them have left us, but what are the big gets for you?
Obviously, when you look at The Thing compared to Aliens, it has a much smaller cast. And with Aliens, only two major members of the cast are no longer with us, very sadly. But with The Thing, it's about 5, I think, now have died, or 4 or 5. And it's a major play, right? Richard Dysart and Donald Moffat and, Wilfred Brimley, hugely great characters, of the film that you would love to have interviewed. So it presents a different structure in a sense than Aliens. So obviously I want all the remaining cast members. I want these, as I was saying, you want this multiplicity of voices, you want this symphonic quality. We've got Carpenter, and that will hopefully open doors. I mean, obviously Kurt Russell is kind of the great kind of like shining light that we're aiming for down the road. We're now, I want as many principal crew members. I've read quite a few interviews with Dean Cundy, the cinematographer.
Cinematographer, yes.
Yeah. He did a lot of 80s films, enormously pivotal figure of 1980s cinema. And he's really interesting because he said he did something where he deliberately took the reflective light in the eye, the kind of glint of light, the human eye. He said he took it out of the Thing people. And this was put to John Carpenter, who went, bullshit, that's not true. So we've got two contrasting views on whether that you can look at the film and see the lack of a glint of light. Cundy said he did it. So I want to talk to him about that, if nothing else, but also I want to talk to him about the look of the film and working with Carpenter and all those elements. So I want some major key crew members, all the cast that are existing, but it isn't a bigger amount of people as with Aliens. So then I want to maybe take it an extra level out and bring in more fans, more big fans. I really would love to talk to some celebrity fans. Quentin is a huge admirer of The Thing, and he's a great commentator on film and a passionate man. And his energy would be such a bonus if we could get him. People like Guillermo del Toro, I think, could speak very wisely and knowledgeably to the Lovecraftian elements of The Thing, and Rob Bottin and the monster elements. I mean, Rob Bottin, is our great white whale.
I was going to ask about Rob, yes.
Oh, yeah. He's not done any interviews for many, many years. He's by reputation very reclusive and doesn't take part in Hollywood anymore. But I'm hoping this would be the thing that, pun intended, this would be the documentary that shows him that we can honor his legacy, because his contribution to that film is immense, not just in terms of technical skill, but narrative. He creates a kind of mythology of this this creature, this map of the universe in different biological forms. It's just wonderful. And I would love to speak to him, and I would bring in maybe a bit more texture, maybe a specialist on Ennio Morricone to talk about the score. There's a little bit more latitude, because with Aliens, there were so many cast members, there was so much to sort of get in, and then your time gets filled up. Whereas I think with The Thing, it might be we can just talk to a few more different kinds of contributors to build up a bigger picture. Carpenter won't talk about the secrets. He won't admit to them. He talks very, interestingly and knowledgeably about the making of, obviously, and his own thoughts and passions and disappointments. But I also want people who will try and answer those questions, who will try and go in and go, well, okay, if you look at Childs at the end and you don't see his breath, and what does that mean? And does that mean he's the thing? And I want a bit of that kind of discussion. So I need people to do that for me. And you want great performers on camera. You want the knowledge, but you also want the personality. So I've got to go looking for that. We had 30 something interviews on Aliens. I would hope to match that number with The Thing. I want that breadth, because you want to be comprehensive.
Well, the film is one big icon, really, isn't it? Or it's made up of lots and lots and lots of iconic moments. We're going to go into picking a couple of your favorite moments from that in a bit, but I suspect that's going to be quite a difficult ask of you, really, Ian, because there's so many good moments in that. Everybody talks about the blood test, for example, but then there's the shed where the dogs are, and you see the Thing dog suddenly burst into this sort of flowery shape, and it's
open.
and then it's pulling in all the other dogs, draining their energy, which is quite horrific even now. So there's so many but it is just one big iconic film that influenced so many people. So I can see why you featured it. You mentioned Macready's character earlier, and some of the characters. I read somewhere that there was some background work, there was a background created for Macready's character, that he was a Vietnam veteran who had suffered PTSD and is therefore a reclusive alcoholic, suffers from depression and insomnia. And although they didn't put that in for pacing reasons more than anything, there's hints to those characteristics in the film, in the way Kurt Russell plays it. Like, for example, his incessant drinking, constant drinking, his red eyes, and the line where he says to Charles, where they say to him, well, you can't stay awake forever. And he says, well, I'm a real light sleeper, Charles. There's all those hits. There's all those hints to that. Is there much more that we can discover about how the characters are formulated?
Certainly, that is going to be a big line of inquiry about. I'd love to talk to Kurt Russell about it. There's kind of usually an interesting parallel between what screenwriter is doing, what Carpenter is doing, and what the actor is doing in terms of what's going on beyond the edge of the screen. What's the backstory, or what's the side story? So I'd really like to talk to Russell about the concept of Macready, bringing in, as you say, a sense of the Vietnam bitterness, that 70s feeling. Trust is a hard thing to come by these days. That's a Nixon era line. It speaks to something different. And Carpenter's a bit, again, he's such a kind of focused talker that I just made the film that was on the page. I just took but he does own up to elements of a wider scope, with his filmmaking. So certainly, I think we're going to go looking for the backstory of The Thing, as in terms of it narratively, not just the making of backstory, the backstory of what's going on. I mean, the Norwegian-based prequel, well, we'll have to discuss it, but for most people, it was quite disappointing. And it's that danger of over-explanation, that prequel danger. But you want hints of, what even are these guys researching in Antarctica? What are the scientists actually doing down there? It's never clearly explained. And that's kind of fascinating to me. Who are these guys, and why they ended up in the middle of nowhere and it's freezing cold? The Cold War elements come into that. one of the things I love about the thing is that it's a great metaphor. Is great art speaks to any era, that kind of saying. And I think the thing does speak to any era. You can sort of impose upon it numerous ideas. The whole AIDS crisis was seen to be predicted by the thing. Predates it slightly. I remember in the middle of COVID, and I was watching news stories where they said, "Oh, we've got a new variant. It's mutating. It's changed." And I thought, God, this is the thing. I'm watching a real life, real world version. This is what happens when it gets out into the world. This is what they're trying to stop. This is what McCready knows he's got to stop. And I thought that's so powerful that a film can have this kind of this commentary on life. You can say it's about Nixon. You could say it's about Trump. You could say it's about so many things, like the idea of truth, dissolving. That it's also, in some senses, it's a Western, which all Carpenter's films are. That it's an outpost. It's the frontier, though it's snow rather than desert. These guys are kind of cowboys. And so there's all these elements that you want to expand upon. And that's the joy of the documentary, is I get to indulge my interests and my kind of sense of inquiry, but also all the fans, as much as I can, draw upon their research, their thoughts, their kind of thinking, and focus it, train it back onto the film, and just see what we can learn, see what we can come away with.
Oh, that'd be great. So let's just talk about a couple of your favorite moments from the thing then, or should I say standout moments? I can imagine.
Yeah.
The thing is one of those films that you watch. There is no one bit that is you think, oh well, they could have done without that. You watched it from you're hooked from beginning to end, and you come away with an emotive response. Well, what for you? We won't go into too much detail because I don't think we've got that kind of time. But unless you want to do another interview, we can pick it up then. But seriously, for everyone, there are some obvious moments. But what for you and the thing are some moments that really stood out for you and still hold today?
Yeah, as I was saying, one of the interesting things about doing the expanded format is you start with the finished film and you take a sequence of sequences and say these are the 15 to 20 things that make the thing. But it's such a tight film. Everything marries together so carefully that it's hard to isolate moments. And I said there's two sides to the film. There is Rob Bottin's great flourish of expression of the creature. And then there is this kind of paranoid, what's going on, mystery story at the same time. You don't know, you don't see. So it's an intriguing film structurally. I mean, I love, the great moments like anyone else. I love the visit to the UFO. I love it. It reminds me very much of Alien and visiting the derelict, and that idea of, this spaceship's been there for 100,000 years, buried in the ice, and it's kind of vast, and your brain starts to go, where's it come from? Is the thing a stowaway on that flying saucer? And was it being piloted by something else? I love that kind of classical Hawksian reference in that the visual references the original Hawks film. I adore McCready, so I love his introduction where he's playing chess with Adrian Barbeau's chess computer, and he just swigs his whiskey and then pours it into the computer, and it's an absurd moment, but I love, that's how you introduce a character. That's all we need to know.
Yeah.
He's willing to blow up his computer. And then I love the scenes that make the thing what it is. As you mentioned, the dog sequence is just hideous in the sense of what it reveals. And if you haven't seen the film before, that's your introduction really to the capacity of the thing to express itself. And this idea that, there are, every rule is off the table. It can be anything, that the survival mechanism requires of it. So your brain starts to go into overdrive about what the hell. And it's also horrible because the poor dogs are dying, and this horrible spray, the visceral quality of it. But the sense,
and that scene was sorry, go on. I was going to say that scene was made worse because they weren't just trying to then kill the thing, but they were having to shoot the dogs that were being drawn in by the thing because they'd
Yeah,
been infected. And there's Clark, played by Richard Mazur, going completely losing it because his babies are being killed quite brutally by
yeah,
both the thing and his campmates. So
yeah. I
it's a
mean,
really emotionally
it's
wrought scene.
incredible. Again, I say this kind of metaphorical power the thing has. I don't know if you've seen Chernobyl, the mini series about the incredible events of Chernobyl.
No, I
But they
haven't.
had to send
Mm-hmm.
gunmen back in to this deserted towns to shoot all the pets because they were irradiated. And if they got out
Mm-hmm.
into other populated areas, you're spreading radiation. So they had to
Yeah.
literally shoot the dogs. And I'm thinking, again, the
Mm-hmm.
thing predicts this kind of stuff to stop the spread. You have to kill
Mm-hmm.
the animals. I mean, just kind of incredible sense of the kind of tendrils of connection that go out from the film. But for me, and I wouldn't call it scene, I would call it Carpenter's kind of operatic sequence. It is the blood test. It's the the
Mm-hmm.
build up of that, and this whole idea of the device that Macready has to test whether somebody is the thing or not is just brilliant. It's just, and it's taken from the book. It's this kind of idea that the thing will always want to protect itself, so the hot wire into the blood, and there's a lovely bit of sound editing as the wire scratches on the bottom of the petri
Oh,
dish, and
yeah.
then you're just
Grates on you,
waiting.
doesn't it?
Yeah, oh. And it's, again, the viscerality of that is extraordinary. But it's a Russian roulette sequence,
Mm-hmm.
whereas and going until all hell breaks loose. But it doesn't end there. That's just the start of that sequence. It just builds and builds. The arms getting bitten off. All the kind of horrors that ensue. That I just kind of love that cumulative power that the thing has, and that any sequence gives birth to another sequence. The head dropping on the floor and sprouting spider legs is just immortal. And not literally immortal because it gets burned by a flamethrower, but it's immortal in terms of the imagery. So yeah, it is a film of kind of glorious, powerful sequences, but at the same time, it's tight. It's not epic, and I don't mean that as derogatory because it's a claustrophobic film and it's wrapped up tight film. That it's not about helicopter shots. The only helicopter shot is probably the beginning. It's all very from the perspective of human character. It's all internal, and that I think is extraordinary. It's a haunted house as well. In some ways, it's more of a sequel to Alien than Aliens is, because it has that shared quality of confined space and of not understanding what you're confronting. And that's really interesting to me because Carpenter had quite a big influence on Alien, through Dark Star and Dan O'Bannon, and he's kind of a key thread through it all. So I think that's in there too.
Well, I think when people think of the thing, they obviously think about the Norris thing. First of all, the chest compression that takes out Copper, played by the late Richard Dysart. Then, of course, there's Norris's chest caving in, the heads, and the spider head thing. All of those things are iconic. And of course, the blood scene. I think for me, it's all the scenes with Blair when he goes mad, when he realizes what the implications are if the thing escapes the camp. And then at some point after all of that, he suddenly becomes the very threat. I think all of that build up and Wilfred Brimley's very understated, because he's quite a powerful actor. He dominates the screen with presence and his vocalizations. So I think for him to just speak very softly, and he's saying, watch Clark, and he's giving Macready all these warnings. I think those are, and they're quite eerily done. I think those are some standout moments for me. But I think also for a bit of comic relief, the one bit of comic relief you have is Gary, played by the late Donald Moffat, when he's tied to the chair. He says, "Oh, I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this." And it's what's shocking about that is even back then, Donald Moffat looked and spoke like everybody's father or grandfather, depending on how old you were at the time. So for him to just completely lose it and swear,
it's a great moment. He does anger really
Yeah,
well,
it's
but yeah,
absolutely. Well, think Clear and Present Danger
yeah.
when he gets very
How dare
angry
you,
at
sir?
Jack
No, how
Ryan.
dare you, sir? I love that moment.
It's great moments.
Yeah.
So there's a real legacy with the thing then to capture in the documentary, and again, look forward to sort of seeing that. Um, so, how do you feel looking back on the film? Then, how do you feel that about it? A, being 40 years old, and B, having this impact that's lasting. And do you think it will continue to last,
Yeah, I think
like
now
another
the thing,
40 years or more?
you reach, legacy cultural classic status, certain films where
Mhm.
they become sort of implanted into culture and forever, I think, in terms of the medium. And although it did poorly when it came out, the thing has certainly attained that status now. I don't think it's anybody you can find. Even critics at the time were quite dismissive. These days, critics, adore the film, and a bit in awe of it.
Mhm.
So I do really think it is a legacy film now. I mean, that brings its own burden to me because you're dealing with a film that people hold very dear. You're dealing with a film that people know very, very well. And as it was with Aliens, you're dealing with something that people care about a lot. So you have to kind of tread lightly, and you have to carry the viewer with you. But you also, I think, one thing I made my peace with Aliens was that, I didn't set out to make a documentary where I would say every beat of this film is going to be brand new, never heard before stories. That wasn't the intention. There is that stuff. You do hit that stuff. But what I was intending to do was answer the question of why do we love Aliens so much? What is it? And that will be true of the thing. What is it about the thing that has made it a classic? What are the elements? And there'll be 4 hours worth of answer to that. There'll be many facets to it. Is saying these individual sequences will reveal stuff. It'll be discussions of Rob Bottin. There'll be discussions of Howard Hawks and Carpenter's relationship with Howard Hawks. It'll be discussions of America and science fiction at that time. All these elements will come into play. That will take you back to the idea of what makes it tick and what makes us love it so much. Greatness is a hard thing to understand. Good, you can probably qualify quite easily. Good plot, interesting twists, and good acting. Great is hard to qualify. What makes a film great? And I think that's what we're in search of. We're in search of the kind of essence that transcends it being just a film, and it becomes this kind of, I say, companion to our lives. And again, I'm not essentially saying I will have an answer, but I will ask a lot of questions that will get us to a point where we will kind of know and feel more about the thing.
And I suspect it will keep the debate going
Oh,
for even longer. People have more insights to bring to the table. It will spark more discussions, or the discussions will evolve in a different direction.
I hope so. I really want people to take the documentary at the end and carry on expanding, to go in their own directions. And that's, I think, been true of Aliens, and people have jumped on certain elements and gone and run with them. And that's just fantastic to me that, you are, as I always say, a conversation with fans and with people who love these films that should fundamentally be very entertaining and should speak to them, but also should be highly intelligent and, discuss the films in ways that they adore. But you want to be a companion. You want to be that friend in the pub who will talk to you for 4 hours about the thing happily. That's what you want to be. And that's what the expanded format is. It's about this thing that drives fans, that it's the soundtrack of our lives. These are the things that mean the most to us. So you've got to treat them with honor.
Thank you for joining us on Cine Bijou, where we shine a spotlight on independent films and the creative minds behind them who continuously push the boundaries of storytelling. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like or follow button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on social media. Why not follow us on Threads, Instagram, YouTube and Facebook for all the latest news, insights and views from the world of independent film. We also love hearing from you, our listeners and followers, so why not drop us a comment or maybe even send us a message. Until next time, keep listening, keep supporting, and help us keep the indie spirit alive.